What is up, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we are fucking into something that absolutely blew my mind coming out of the cybersecurity world recently. We always talk about firewalls, VPNs, and how secure corporate networks are supposed to be. But what if I told you that the very tools you use every single day to do your job, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, are actually providing the perfect cover for hackers like us to bypass those security measures? We aren't talking about a simple phishing link here. We are talking about a sophisticated technique called ghost calls. This is a method where I can literally hide my command and control traffic inside what looks like a normal video call. To the firewall, it looks like you are just in a boring Monday morning stand-up meeting. But in reality, I could be tunneling data, stealing credentials, and running remote commands right under the nose of the security team. This research comes from Adam Crosser at Praetorian, presented at Black Hat USA, and we are going to break down exactly how it works, why it works, and look at the open source tool called Turnt that makes it possible. To understand how we can hack a network using Zoom or Teams, we first have to understand why network administrators configure things the way they do. In the security world, there is always a war between security and performance. If you work in a big company, you are probably using a VPN. When you are on that VPN, typically all your traffic goes through the company's data center, gets inspected by a firewall, and then goes out to the internet. This is great for security, but it is terrible for real-time video. Have you ever been on a Teams call and the video freezes, the audio cuts out, and everyone sounds like a robot? That is often because of the latency introduced by routing that traffic through a central VPN concentrator before it hits the internet. It's essentially taking a massive detour. Because of this, providers like Microsoft and Zoom explicitly tell IT administrators to change their settings. They recommend using something called split tunneling. Split tunneling is basically a rule that says, send all the sensitive corporate data through the secure VPN, but let the Zoom and Teams traffic go directly to the internet. They recommend bypassing the VPN and, crucially, bypassing proxy servers and SSL inspection. They do this because inspecting encrypted video traffic introduces latency and jitter, which kills the user experience. And that right there is the golden ticket for me. Because the corporate firewall sees traffic going to zoom.us or teams.microsoft.com, it essentially whitelists it. It says, oh, that's just a meeting. Let it through. Don't slow it down. Don't inspect it. So if I can make my malicious traffic look exactly like a Zoom meeting, I have a free pass out of the network. Now, we need to get a little technical to understand how the data actually moves. How do these apps connect two people for a video call if they are both behind different corporate firewalls? They use a framework called WebRTC, and specifically a protocol called TURN. TURN stands for Traversal Using Relays Around NAT. Here is the simple version. Network Address Translation, or NAT, hides your internal IP address from the internet. Because of this, I usually can't connect directly to your laptop, and you can't connect directly to mine. To solve this, Zoom and Microsoft set up massive servers called TURN servers. Think of a TURN server like a mutual friend or a middleman. I send my video data to the TURN server, and the TURN server relays it to you. These TURN servers are hosted by the providers themselves. They are trusted infrastructure. The research presented at Black Hat revealed that if I compromise a laptop, I can ask the Zoom or Teams application to generate valid credentials for these TURN servers. Once I have those credentials, I don't have to use them for video. I can use them to relay any data I want. I am effectively using Zoom's own servers as a proxy to bypass the corporate firewall. Let's look at what this looks like in the real world. How do we get these keys? When you open Microsoft Teams or Zoom on your computer, the application automatically sends a request to the backend. It essentially asks, hey, I might need to make a call soon. Give me a list of relay servers and the passwords to use them. If we look at the actual data packets for Zoom, we get a JSON response that includes a list of ICE servers. Inside that list, we see a username, a credential, which is the password, and the URLs for the TURN servers. The same thing happens with Microsoft Teams. If we inspect the traffic, we see a JSON response containing a token that gives us a username, a password, and a realm. Here is the scary part. These credentials are not just for a single call. The research found that these credentials are usually valid for hours, sometimes up to 24 hours. Furthermore, because these apps are designed to work from coffee shops, airports, and offices, these credentials aren't tied to your specific IP address. I can extract these credentials from a victim's machine, exfiltrate them, and then use them to tunnel traffic from anywhere. This is where the theory turns into practice. The researcher released a tool called Turnt to demonstrate this. This tool is written in Go, which is great for us because it produces standalone binaries that are easy to drop onto a target machine. The workflow for an attack using Turnt is shockingly straightforward. First, I have my implant, that's the malware, on a victim's computer. This computer is likely locked down. It can't browse to suspicious websites, and the firewall blocks most outgoing ports. But the victim has Teams installed. The implant monitors the application or scrapes the memory to grab those TURN credentials we just talked about. Next, the implant uses those credentials to open a connection to the official Zoom or Teams TURN server on port 443. On the other side of the world, I also connect to that same TURN server. The TURN server then bridges the gap. I can now send data through the Microsoft or Zoom cloud down to the victim, and the victim's firewall just sees legitimate traffic going to a Microsoft domain like worlda's-si.relay.teams.microsoft.com. The tool Turnt supports a few different modes, but the most powerful one is SOX proxying. If you have done any hacking or penetration testing, you know how powerful a SOX proxy is. It allows me to run tools on my attacking machine like curl, Nmap, or Impacket and have their traffic originate from the victim's machine inside the network. I am basically sitting at the victim's desk, digitally speaking. Let's paint a picture of a red team scenario to see why this is so dangerous. Imagine I am targeting a highly secure financial institution. They have deep packet inspection turned on. They block all unknown domains. I managed to get a foothold on an employee's laptop via a phishing email, but my command and control beacon cannot call home because the firewall blocks my unknown C2 domain. But the employee uses Microsoft Teams for their daily meetings. My malware stays dormant. It waits for the user to open Teams. As soon as they do, my malware grabs the TURN credentials. Now, my malware opens a connection to the Teams relay server. The corporate firewall sees this connection request. It checks its rules. Is this destination trusted? Yes, it is Microsoft. Is it on the split tunnel whitelist? Yes, for performance reasons. Should I inspect the SSL? No, Microsoft recommends against it to avoid jitter. So the firewall lets the connection through. I now have a two-way tunnel. I can start running tools like secretsdump.py to dump password hashes from the internal network, piping the results out through that Teams connection. The security team looking at the logs just sees Microsoft Teams traffic. They might see a slight increase in volume, but unless they are looking very closely, it blends in with the gigabytes of video and audio data leaving the network every day. This is basically living off the land, but applied to the network layer. We aren't just using built-in tools like PowerShell, we are using the built-in network infrastructure of the SaaS providers themselves. Now you might be thinking, surely we can detect this? It is incredibly difficult. First, let's talk about TLS inspection. Usually, a company breaks the SSL connection to look inside the packets to see if there is malicious data. But as we mentioned, organizations specifically disable this for Zoom and Teams because it creates latency. If you inspect every packet of a video call, the call drops. So the traffic is opaque to the defenders. The blue team literally cannot see what is inside my tunnel. Second, let's talk about traffic volume. You might try to look for a spike in data. But video calls are heavy. A 100 megabyte file download exfiltrating sensitive data looks a lot like a few minutes of high-definition video. It is hiding a needle in a stack of needles. Third, look at the destination. I am not connecting to a suspicious hacker domain. I am connecting to legitimate IP addresses owned by Zoom and Microsoft. You can't just block these IP ranges without breaking the application for the entire company. However, detection isn't impossible. The research points out that while the channel is hard to detect, the behavior might not be. For example, process monitoring is key. A normal Zoom client behaves in a very specific way. If you see a random binary or a PowerShell script reaching out to known Turn server IP addresses, that is a huge red flag. Zoom traffic should come from zoom.exe, not PowerShell.exe. Another great suggestion from the presentation is using canary tokens. These are essentially honey credentials. You place fake AWS keys or database passwords on your endpoints. If I use this tunnel to steal those keys and try to use them, you get an alert. You might not catch the tunnel itself, but you will catch the theft and the attempt to use the stolen data. Defenders also need to look for anomalous tooling. If I am using the tunnel to run tools like Impacket, those tools leave their own signatures on the endpoint. If you catch the tool running, the method of exfiltration becomes less relevant. The ghost calls technique is a perfect example of how our desire for convenience and speed creates security holes. We wanted fast video calls, so we disabled inspection. We wanted connectivity from anywhere, so we created long-lived relay credentials. Attackers will always follow the path of least resistance. Right now, that path is paved by the tools we trust the most. The tool Turnt is open source and available for educational research, helping defenders understand this risk so they can start looking at who is talking to Microsoft Teams, not just assuming that if it is Teams, it must be safe. This changes the game for internal network security monitoring. We can no longer just trust the pipe because of the logo on the destination. We have to look closer at what is actually traveling. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video. One life, one shot. Make it count.